Welcome to the Power of Pleasure podcast. I'm your host, L'Oreal, and I'm on a mission to help you embrace pleasure as a lifestyle. This show is a love letter to all the pleasure life has to offer. And each week, I'll be chatting with friends, loved ones, peers, and people I admire about all things pleasure. Through these conversations, I'm giving you the best tools, resources, and tips to help you create a life that is ooey gooey juicy good, one shift at a time. So buckle up and let's get ready for this week's episode. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, beautiful people. Thank you so much for joining me wherever you may be today. I'm your host of the Power of Pleasure podcast, L'Oreal, and today I am joined with an amazing, holistic mental health and wellness practitioner and best-selling author. Dr. Reese is here. Hello, hello. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
I am doing pretty damn good, and I'm glad about that today. So I'm really excited. I absolutely want to talk to you about your book, but I have to ask some other questions before that. So the whole premise of this podcast is to help people to rediscover joy, rediscover pleasure, figure out what that means to them. Because a lot of people automatically, when they hear pleasure, they think sex. And we know that there are people who are abstaining from sex, don't like sex, maybe they're asexual, whatever the case may be. But outside of all of that, you can cultivate joy and pleasure in any area of your life. I know that that's something that I definitely want and need. And so I figure who better to speak with than someone with your particular specific set of skills. So could you tell us a little bit about your journey and how you became a holistic mental health professional?
Well, I had always wanted to be in mental health from the get-go, but through my own lived history and then teenage paralysis, I taking the traditional path to that wasn't an option. So I had to start volunteering in social work until I got paid opportunities with my background. And from there, I had the opportunity to also complete all of my training in traditional indigenous medicine, looking at healing our bodies and our minds from a completely holistic point of view. And even in that, it's given me the opportunity to actually include pleasure and sexuality, and I don't mean sex, in the actual holistic model of just learning to become one with your body and to know what sensations or lighting or even experiences like overstimulate you, make you uncomfortable, like make it so that your skin crawls versus what brings you joy, what makes you feel safe in a room and your body, what makes it so that you can just freely exist as yourself. And that's where I, without even diving truly into holistics, you can just look at it from the point of view of your senses. Are you actually present in the moment?
I love that. And that's really simple. And that really is a perfect segue into the next question. Because I know for me, I've been trying to figure out this whole human spiritual journey situation for a while. And the topic of holistic health and holistic healing comes up a lot. But there's such a mix of information when it comes to that. So could you explain what holistic health is like I'm an elementary school student?
Well, your holistic health is, albeit, yes, natural, but if we're using the word natural in place of the word holistic, we're actually missing the entire mark on it because it's the ability to analyze every single pillar of your wellness, as many levels as you want to break it down. to looking into your contributing factors and actually letting you work on each one individually to add up to your collective health, like such as the medicine wheel adopted by North American indigenous people is split into four quadrants: mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional. I take it a step further with the fifth diving into sexuality, but it can be that simple. Oh, you felt like crap for weeks? Where are you in each of your different parts of your chart?
Mhm.
And take it from there, even as simply as rating yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 in each category.
Okay. Okay, I like that a lot. And so, based on what you just said, it absolutely sounds like it is imperative to be able to be present and to be in your body. Um, but I'm sure you know that, like with social media and the rate at which we get information, although it makes it easier for us to connect with people, it also makes it harder for us to connect with people. It, in a sense, being able to have easy access to people, it also just kind of strips away the humanity. And I think sometimes we forget that people are going through things and we're not going to get instant responses to, social media messages or a text message or whatever. And that can cause people to internalize a lot of things that really don't have anything to do with them. So, what are some tips that you can offer to people who may be struggling with that?
If you're someone that feels the overwhelm of constant bombardment, or you're glued to your phone because you are a high level service professional or business owner, mute it. You are allowed to skip your notifications so that when you actually have the capacity, you can look at your phone without it having the ability to override your nervous system without your consent.
What are some ways that we can actively take present offline? Because I know for me, I'm married, I have kids, I have, pets, I have like all these responsibilities. And especially for Black women, brown women, a lot of us are conditioned from the time of like being a kid to put everybody else's needs before your own. And it really becomes like almost taboo to say, hey, like I need some time for myself or I need to focus on myself. And even getting started with the tips that you provided can feel really, really hard. And they can, I know for me, it can bring about like panic or even like guilt for making that small decision to just say no, or maybe to just take a couple of deep breaths when you're right in the middle of something that feels urgent or it feels like it needs to get done like right now. So, what are some ways to maybe get other people involved until like you're able to do it completely on your own, if that makes sense?
Well, I mean, you could start as easily as a breathwork or a mindfulness series to work with a practitioner in generally small group settings to even just integrate a few like starter skills. But I mean, as you stated, I was going to suggest like taking a few breaths, like even just without controlling your breathing, focus on your actual breath for even a minute, just observing it in how it is. Or, when them kids are driving you up the wall, stepping outside for a second, observing all of the surroundings on your porch. And then when you realize that you're actually back in your body, step back into your life because you'll have the capacity to respond instead of react.
That's a really, really good one too, because I think a lot of us focus on like reacting to life instead of just like responding to things as they happen. And that tends to get confused with being proactive. but what you're really doing is planning for potential problems that haven't even been created yet. So where do you think the desire to create those problems comes from?
Well, ultimately, it's a dysregulated nervous system, whether that stems from like as far back as someone's childhood or to like the most recent years of their life. It's that cycle of mismanaged neuroplasticity. It's because you let yourself get into that cycle, and instead of taking the time to break it, you just let it exist because it's the way that it is, so to speak.
Okay. And so that leads me into my next question. So I know that you primarily work with female or like female presenting clients. You really are passionate about helping women to heal from their trauma. So when it comes to that, what are some of the common roadblocks that you've noticed that women encounter when they first start that journey of wanting to like take the holistic route and heal without necessarily having to take over the counter medication? Like I know that those things do have their place, but a lot of people are trying to like detox from things like that. They're looking for healing through plants and whatever else they can do. But what are some common roadblocks that women encounter when they first start their holistic healing journey?
I would say the number one barrier is that none of us think we have any time.
Mm,
When we also don't realize that if you don't start today, you're never gonna. And because we've all been conditioned to make everyone else in the world a higher priority than ourselves due to social conditioning and society and everything else, it can be really hard to even just take an hour for one to one and then cumulatively through the rest of the week, an hour for homework. This 2 hours a week to work on yourself. But all you really have to do is take those out of the time you spend numbing out on your phone.
that's big, and I don't even think people really pay attention to how much time they spend. What do they call it? Doom scrolling, just
Hmm.
mindlessly scrolling, mindlessly consuming content, especially watching like the TikTok videos and the reels. And it's all a part of the design, right? Those videos are what anywhere from 30 to 60 seconds a piece. And you can just scroll and they auto play for like hours. You can just go from thing to thing to thing to thing. And then before you know it, it's time for you to get to the next thing. When you could have taken that hour or 2 hours, however long you were watching those videos, to focus on yourself. And not saying that those videos can't help sometimes, because I do believe that laughter is a great form of like therapy and self care, but it can get to be a bit much. And I know, speaking for myself, and I have a couple of friends that do this too, we use scrolling as a way to like resist or put off doing what we need to do. And so when you are working with clients that you notice are doing that, what are some of the things that you do to help them overcome that?
Well, if you're stuck in the numbing out and the doom scrolling, first I'm gonna suggest you set a timer for yourself. If it's that much of a barrier, then put a timer on it. But you actually have to honor yourself and override your persistent demand avoidance when that timer goes off. It's not shut it off and keep scrolling. It's put the phone away. Go do the next thing on your I need to do this list. And but also again, like that actually takes us back to becoming present in our bodies. Because if you're actually present in your body, very few things are overwhelming. Nothing is an I need to do this right now or I need to avoid it right now. And and it's just getting them back into grounding techniques, whether meditation, breath work, like sensory stuff. There are thousands of options, and yet you're choosing TikTok or Netflix.
Netflix is a big one too, for sure. So there has been some discourse lately that I've been noticing, as people are working on themselves or whatever the case may be, especially with all of this energy, all of these new moons and full moons and eclipses and second moons and all that stuff that's going on right now. There has been a circling back of this discourse about people using their healing as an excuse to not live their life. Can you speak to that a little bit? Have you ever experienced that either personally or with a client?
I would say lots of people, especially in North America, when they're in their spiritual healing or they're in their own like emotional healing, they often feel and are told now that new age, which is really just appropriated spirituality, has turned into this cult where if you are not acting in some gatekeepers' chosen ways, that A, you're doing it wrong, and B, you're not worthy. And yet we're all worthy of the love we need. We're all worthy of the people that we need to have in our life that make us feel whole. You being unhealed does not denote that in any way, shape, or form. You still
Mm,
deserve to be loved, cherished, valued, like all of the good things. And this whole really like it's almost as bad as the church in saying that if you're imperfect, you're not going to heaven.
mm. That is really, really good. I think a lot of people do forget about that. There tends to come a point in the healing journey where, like you said, it's very similar to like being in the church or a part of a specific religion where you give so much of your personal power and your agency over to that religion or that particular practice. And so I know that that's something else that you work with your clients on. You want them to rediscover their power and rediscover their agency in themselves. And so, what are some of the tools or techniques that you've used to help women with that?
Well, with that, I that the biggest one would actually be in retraining your gut and your intuition. When you get a feeling about something,
Mhm.
observe it, listen to it, see where it stems from, and if that's a okay, that doesn't sit well with me, or a hey, this feels good to me. Because spirituality is the spirit of yourself. Like it's truly just to become the best version of yourself. None of those practices matter if they don't actually align with who you are as an individual. And I don't care who's telling you that you need to do things a certain way. If that doesn't work for you, then throw it out the window.
That seems simple enough. I guess playing a little bit of devil's advocate here would be so when it comes to your gut instinct from someone who's an overthinker, like I'm an overthinker, I'm working on it, I really am. But like when it comes to make like retraining your gut and learning to listen to your intuition, how do you listen to your intuition and, trust those gut feelings without judging the feelings that come up as a part of like that programming and socialization and all of that?
Well, ultimately, you're gonna have to learn to just sit with your uncomfortable feelings and emotions with any form of like mental health recovery, but to learn to give yourself the grace to just feel what you feel. Yeah, I judge myself for shit, but then it's also okay, but did I have to do it? Yes.
Mhm.
Then okay.
Mhm.
If there was there no better way, then fine.
Mhm.
Oh, you don't want to go to that event that you RSVP'd to because now that the week has passed or however long, you don't have the energy? Cancel. Say sorry. I don't have the capacity for this. My apologies. I hope you all have a great time. Yes, there's still going to be peer pressures, and there are going to be the pressures that you portray onto yourself. but that's where we focus on the art of fucking letting it go.
Easier said than done, but totally possible. Because
Exactly.
we see examples of it every single day. And I feel like that's definitely something that you touch on in your book. So let's get to that and talk about how that came to be.
Wow, becoming blissful, my new release is really just the harmonious unity of modern psychology and social work practices with my training in Indigenous medicine for drug and pharmaceutical free trauma recovery. Because, as you've stated, everyone is realizing that medication is only a temporary solution.
Mhm.
And that even though you take medication, even if that's your go-to, you actually need the tools to better manage your mind and to live a better life so that you are not putting yourself in the situations of being in a constant cycle of hurricane sized feelings. I mean, ultimately, being stuck in that cycle is its own hellscape. And only in unpacking it, whether through talk therapy or like specialized PTSD techniques that help you like localize an event so that you can actually process it, because anything that is too intense for our brains and our bodies to handle will often just be locked away in our mind until your body feels safe enough to process it. And when those memories come back, that's going to be more jarring than the actual conscious PTSD that you may have lived with, because while you assumed that's what it was, you weren't actively or subconsciously feeling it because it was truly just tapped away in your mind, like in a secure vault until it comes back. And that's why even in my practice, I follow more of a coaching model, even though it is tried and true practices of, the modern ways and the old, because in these moments between sessions is when you're actually applying the tools we learn, or you're experiencing moments that are still too intense and you're forgetting what those tools are. But having the ability to reach out to your professional and go, hey, this is what's going on. I'm forgetting the tool for this. Or, hey, can you walk me through this again so that I'm doing it correctly? Speeds up the recovery process because you're not waiting upwards of a week or a month to get it. You're just shooting off a message. And in my case, as soon as I have the time in my day, I either respond in a detailed voice note or a text. And like anyone who needs that immediate support, like they're amazed. I'm like, I didn't spend all this time becoming a top tier professional to not be able to help you virtually from wherever you are.
Mhm. And there's so many people that need that, right? There's all these experts and professionals in the industry, but there's always this level of distance. And I know that that's important to have, because we all have our personal lives and you don't want things to become too like commingled, but there's almost this separation of I'm going to give you this much and then I'm going to, back away. I won't be available for, whatever the situation is. And I think that is a big part of what keeps people
Mhm.
from trying to even find practitioners, because maybe they've had an experience like that where they were in the middle of a crisis or they were having a really bad fucking day and they needed to be able to speak with the person that they probably trust the most, if they're coming to you bearing their souls about everything, and then that person wasn't available or they couldn't coach them or they want to talk about, you know, co-pays or whatever the case, instead of attending to that immediate need. So is that part of what helped you make the decision to operate the way that you do?
Yes. And also from the years on the high risk side and the front lines,
Mhm.
because even not on call in the middle of the night, the youth would message me completely frantic because something had happened, or it was a night where I needed to talk them off a metaphorical bridge.
Mhm.
And well, today, my clients know my generalized sleeping hours and that outside of business, like my phone is in do not disturb, but they know that I'm also going to respond as soon as I can.
Mhm.
Like they're not sitting there expecting an instant response because I mean generally they're not in crisis. They're just hey, like can you help me with this? I want to do it better. But it really did help form that no, when you were being that vulnerable with your professional, you need the ability to say, hey, can you walk me through the tool again? Can you reiterate this? Can this is how I'm doing it. Am I doing this right? Because it's not working the same way it did when you showed me. And really, it's my job as the professional to make sure that not only do you have the tools, but you know how to effectively use them for your best interests.
I like that a lot. I love talking to you about your clients and the way that you work with your clients because it is really on par with just the way that I see things heading when it comes to just health overall. It's definitely more of like a community base. Like you still are giving that individualized attention, but you don't make your clients feel othered. You don't make your clients feel isolated or set apart in a not so great way from other people. And I think that that's really important, or even setting them apart from you. Like, there's no sense of I'm up here and you're down here. Like I'm looking down on you and I'm going to bless you with all of my knowledge or whatever
Oh
the fuck.
gosh, no.
And so,
Yeah. There's definitely no hierarchical BS from the
mhm,
industry in that because again, like even though it's coaching model, like I don't consider myself a coach. I really just a holistic mental health professional using my training as a medicine woman and my background in high risk social work. And that's what I tell everyone because no, I'm not better than you. I just have a different knowledge base.
mhm. That's what it comes down to. That's
And
absolutely what it comes down to.
and frankly, every client that I have, I've been in their shoes.
Mhm,
I spent years in their shoes. Like when they come to me with their pain, like I'm not kidding when I say I understand.
mhm,
And they know that whether they've read my first two books or not, they go, Reese, I can tell that you know.
mhm. You're speaking from a place of lived experience and not just a place of I can comprehend what you're saying. Like I can understand, what you're saying, but you're speaking from I've actually been through this, so I really do know. And I think that's how you get under people's skin so easy too, cuz you can you know about the things that they're not saying. Like you know about the pieces of the story that they're holding back.
Yes, and that is both a gift and a curse because I read most people like a letter
Mhm.
and I can pinpoint them almost instantaneously and it creeps them out generally
Mhm.
at first until they realize like I'm only doing it from a mother hen place of a come
Mhm.
here baby, let me keep you safe. Let me
Mhm.
walk you through this so that you can get to the other side. But they also see the value in the fact that I will TED talk it through the applied science and the
Mhm.
actual, well, this is why we do it that way if you want to know.
Mhm.
And people are amazed that I carry that knowledge at such a young age, but they
Mhm.
forget that I've dedicated my entire life to studying this field.
And I think that that's really like a blessing because a lot of people are not putting in the time, right? Like anybody can get a degree. Anybody can get a certification. Like in people you can get certified to like be a the people that do the weddings, I can't
Mhm.
remember what you call, but you can do that in like 5 minutes online. You know, like it doesn't take anything to get certified or to like stamp yourself as having a certain level of knowledge because you took this class online or you paid a certain amount of money. And so I think being able to speak with people like you on platforms like this who really know what the fuck they're talking about. And it's not just, hey, I've done this thing, or hey, I read this book and I memorized it, so now I know. It's like, no, being able to actually go through experiences and take what you've learned and apply it to your own healing. Being able to process yourself through things and to be so comfortable in yourself that you know when, hey, this is not something that I can handle alone. I need to reach out to someone too. And then being able to take all of that and help your clients is like a really big deal.
Well, and it's a really high honor to be able to mesh my training and my work experience also with my personal experience, because out of the thousands of tools, I know what has efficacy with people like me.
Mhm.
And I also know what tools are going to work with your type B, your type C, and your type D personalities. But all of us stubborn, hard-headed, too independent
Mhm.
to function sometimes. Personalities, I know what works with all of you.
Mhm.
And I mean, L'Oreal, I say this with love. Sometimes it's your personality that I would like to take a bullwhip to and go back to my days of being a pro dom. But instead, I try to speak to you kindly and go, really, woman?
I appreciate that because I'm definitely in the talk to me nice phase, like I'm raw. But when I get it together, I'm coming for the real. And I know that I can count on you for that. And that is why I love you, because you hold nothing back and you don't take my bullshit. And I need that. And
Well,
we
then
all need people like that in our life.
I don't take anyone's shit. For
Mhm.
example, I walked into a networking event last night that was in an open space. It wasn't sectioned off, it wasn't closed. And I found a group of people that looked like they were lost and confused. And I politely asked, are you guys here to network tonight?
Mhm.
And I got attitude from three women in the corner that they had snarky responses. And instead of biting my tongue, went, you could have just said yes and not been a bitch about it.
Mhm. Yeah.
And the people that were also there for networking but weren't in the bitchy corner all came up to me later and started the conversation with, yeah, these people were not inviting, they were not welcome, and they weren't being kind to anybody. It's okay that you said something. I'm like, you don't have to reassure me. Whether it was okay that I said it or not, I did, and I don't have any regrets.
Mhm. I think sometimes people do that because they want to validate their own feelings. Like in those moments where we're in a situation where we could take action and for whatever reason we decide not to, and then you see someone stand up and do the thing and it's like, "Oh, wow, I could have done that. That was really cool. Let me go and say something." Like they do that to kind of validate that their thought was okay to have,
Well,
you know?
exactly. And in the minimizing of other people. And even,
Mhm.
yes, I could have chose gentler words. I definitely could have. I
Yeah,
own that.
sometimes people need to know you'll cuss them the fuck out. Like sometimes people need to know.
But it set the tone for all the men in the room to only approach with respect because they knew that I would chew them out.
Mhm.
And in that case, like, I'm also here in not just the mental health and trauma space, but in the pleasure space of helping teach you to advocate for your own needs, wants, and desires.
And a lot of us have to relearn that.
Exactly, because our nervous systems are completely out of whack.
Yeah.
And what you need on a day when you're dysregulated or angry is not what you need on a day when you need to just be loved up on and babied by your partner or even yourself.
Mhm. Mhm. And so that brings me back to the topic of like how you take care of your clients, right? And you mentioned that there are very specific things that they're aware of and they're generally not in crisis. And that kind of flicked the light bulb on for me. So, would you say in your experience, and I know that you're keeping up with like trends in the market when it comes to mental health and health and all of that, would you say that there is an uptick of clients that are practicing holistic health, you know, non pharmaceutical as much as possible, that are experiencing less moments of that kind of panic and like frantic episodes as opposed to people who are leaning more on like the medication and all that stuff?
Yes, simply. But mostly because anyone that has been willing to even start in holistics and in reading how to better manage their mind with self-help books, let's say,
Mhm.
they generally know the basics of either focusing on your breath or entry level breathing techniques to help them through something. Or they've also already gotten to a point where they understand that sometimes they just need to let something out. Like
Mm.
me, when I'm experiencing any intense emotion or situation, generally I just need 5 minutes to talk about it. And I I have my people for that. Like I will phone up my work wife, be like, yo, this just went down. Can you give me five? And then I vent about it. And then by the end of those 5 minutes, I'm completely back to okay, this is homeostasis for Reese. Because honestly, like you need to let it go. And that's why I still start with talk. Because even if you don't want to give me the how we got here, let's
Mhm.
start with how you are today. Because we can get to how you got here later on when you are more comfortable and you are more aware of not just who you are, but how you feel.
And I think that how are you today is a really powerful question, especially when you're dealing with people who have had a lot of experience, whether it's with therapists or doctors, or they're just really smart, really educated people. They know how to have conversations and how to lead conversations a certain way. They know what kind of language to use, what kind of language not to use. They have usually already crafted a response to certain kinds of questions. Oh, tell me about your childhood. Tell me about this and that. But when you bring them to how they're currently feeling, it's like, I don't know. I
Yeah.
haven't thought about that. I Nobody really asks me how I'm doing on a day-to-day basis.
Well, exactly. And I mean, with some of my clients, that there are weeks where I let them assign their own homework. It's that
Mm,
okay, so you've implemented all these tools. What are you gonna do for yourself in the next week? That you're gonna come back and tell me about that you actually went and did.
mhm.
It's because it's not just that okay, I'm the expert. It's that anyone that works with me, we are a team.
Mhm.
That there are days where there's definitely more cheerleading because there's more success, but then there are days where there's more hand-holding and the guiding through it because mental health also involves this deep grieving process of not only who you were before whatever happened, but also the person you became to survive it
Mm.
and
Mhm.
letting these versions of yourself go while also finally allowing yourself to feel all of the stages of grief towards these two people that are different versions of yourself. And nobody prepares you for that. And that's why there's actually an entire section of it written in the book. Because it's
Mhm.
not just let me give you my process, but also let me walk you through what your actual healing journey might feel and look like.
A lot of people need to know that, and I think that it's part of the reason why, especially when people start a spiritual journey after they've been through a traumatic experience of whatever kind, and they start this spiritual journey, and there's so many episodes of spiritual psychosis because they're doing the work and they're not necessarily doing anything wrong, but they're doing the work and they're peeling back these layers, but they don't know how to process all of those emotions. They don't know how to move themselves through, like you said, those memories that come back. And a lot of times people relive the trauma. It feels like they're right back in the middle of whatever that experience was. And it's absolutely important for people to know that, hey, that's the normal thing that happens, but you can get through it. It doesn't mean that you're going crazy, but if you're not tending to it, it can lead to some severe mental health issues.
Exactly. And that's why even folks that aren't like in a program with me and choose to just like focus on like a trauma release session,
Yeah.
they get 72 hours of access to my Voxer, because it's no that there are going to be moments after you just had this eureka with your own mental health and your PTSD that you're going to go, oh my God, Reese, is this really happening? Or can you help me process this in a second? And either I will get on a call, or I will just talk them through it, because that can be so tumultuous and ultimately detrimental to the journey if you're starting this upward trajectory, and now
Mhm.
you've hit one of your big root points of your trauma, and you're freaking out because you're reliving it. you
Yeah.
you are back in the depths of every flashback, so vivid that you can see them and taste them and smell them, and you don't know how. Yet that's when I'm gonna hit you with the love the most. It's just,
Mhm.
no, come on. Where do you want to start? Do you want to start breathing, visualization, meditation? Do you just want to talk about it? And I will hit them with options, because each person's going to respond in that situation differently. Some people need to talk. Some people might just want a voice note of me walking them through a grounding activity. Some people just wanted to state it, but instead are going to go journal or meditate or go for a walk, or maybe even make art, either visually or through music. Those are all okay options. There is no one size fits all to mental health recovery. And that's also why all of my stuff is live and one to one. Because I
Mm.
can't walk you through this paper book program of fix your brain.
Mhm.
No. Hey,
Yeah.
you are an individual. You are L'Oreal. You're not Karen. Well, sometimes. Um, but it's that taking the holistic and the individualized approach, because the booklet system of cure your anxiety after you read this 10-page booklet is a facade, and it's only perpetuated the trauma of the actual westernized mental health industry more.
Got it. Okay. On that note, that brings me to, I think, maybe the last two or three questions that I want to ask you during our interview, because we could go like on and on because I love all this stuff. But when it comes to how you manage to keep yourself grounded and just feeling good and feeling joy, what would you say is like your top pleasure principle?
I would say meditation, proper exercise, and a diet that actually makes my body feel good.
Mhm. Yeah, I think a lot of people tend to, like, when they want to get healthier, they start eating food that they absolutely hate, and then they wonder why it's hard to like keep the momentum going.
Right? See, and luckily for me, the food that makes my body feel good runs deeper, thanks to chronic illness and needing to eat a very specialized way. to reduce day-to-day pain. But it's also, oh, you've had a rough day or a rough week and you want to get that pizza delivered, get it. Yeah, don't
Mhm.
make it a habit, but if
Mhm.
every once in a while you need the cheat meal, the cheat weekend, if that's going to crutch you through the weekends to get you back to a place where you can do all the things that you need to do, take the breaks. Whether it's a break in food or diet or exercise, like remember to rest and just nourish your body, because if you're actually present, you can feel all these lovely things in life. And
Absolutely. Go ahead.
not just your mom vibrator.
Agreed, agreed. And I think, one of the biggest disservices that we do to ourselves, like you said, is we're convincing ourselves that we don't have time. We don't have time to breathe. We don't have time to have that cheat meal, and then convincing ourselves that we don't have time, it also means that we can't have fun and we can't do things that make us feel good because everything else takes precedence over that. And that's just absolutely false.
Well, exactly. Like nothing sets me up better for my week than going for my run right before my first day and the night before, so that my mind is clear and it's actually ready when I wake up the next day.
Mhm.
And well, yes, I still take my slow mornings. I've
Mhm.
structured my days so that I get 3 hours to meditate, listen to music, drink a ton of tea,
Mhm.
and just really center myself and make sure that anything going on in my life is not being taken into my sessions.
Mm. Yes, yes, yes. I love that. Okay. Next question. Describe what pleasure means to you.
Pleasure is really just the center point of bliss, joy, enjoyment, happiness, and peace on any level that you want to take that. Like it can be physical, it can be emotional, it could even be spiritual, depending on what's going on in your life.
Thank you so much for that. And so, as always, I want the people to know how they can get in touch with you. So, how can the people get in touch with you and where can they get your book?
Well, you can find me everywhere on social media under the handle of Trauma to Bliss. You can also find me at traumatobliss.ca. And initially, Becoming Blissful is easiest to access on Amazon, but my distributed publishing, I'm generally within Barnes& and Noble, Walmart, Kohl's, Indigo chapters in less than a few months.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited. And I plan on getting mine from like Barnes and Noble. Because Amazon is a whole different story for another day. Um, so, but thank you so much for taking the time to bless me with your presence and bless the audience with your presence and your knowledge. This has been excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a complete pleasure.
Yay!
Thank you for joining me on this week's episode of the Power of Pleasure podcast. Make sure to check the website, powerofpleasurepodcast.substack.com. On the site, not only will you find some blog posts and other helpful tools to help you continue the mission, you'll also be able to access the show notes as well as any social links and resources from this week's guest. While you're at it, if you found this information valuable, which I'm sure you did in some way, go ahead and take a few moments to leave a rating or review wherever you're listening to this episode and share out on social. I hope to see you next week for another episode of the show. And in the meantime, in between time, go out and do one thing today to help you embrace pleasure as a lifestyle.